What's up, everybody? It's Bear from the internet. This question came in on Patreon, and I thought it was such a good question that I'd push this out to Gen Pop here on YouTube. It's from WS. And the question is, I would like some insight on the first week plans for if when the grid drops. So for example, say there's a large regional or national event that drops the electric grid. Click, lights off, 3, 2, 1, go. From this point, what happens over the first week? It's a good question. And I'm basing my answer to this question on my experience both working in the power construction industry, building high lines, wind turbines, which are sham, unless you use them for your house, solar arrays, a couple of coal plants, transmission and distribution kind of stuff, as well as the 41 times that we have deployed Grindstone Ministries, which is our disaster relief ministry, on tornado and hurricane scenes. So kind of got both sides of the spectrum here. So what would happen over the first week? From this point, what happens over the first week is the question that WS has posed. So I got 10 things here I want to look at with you, and they are food, water, utilities, commo and intel, public safety, civil unrest, medical, transportation and fuel, curfews and martial law, and follow-on attacks. I'm going to try and breeze through these so this can be a concise video. I'll do my best. So first thing is food. What should you do in the first week? Have a week's worth of food in your house. You should have way more than a week's worth of food in your house, but it's something like 70% of Americans have 3 days or less worth of food in their house. And 95% of statistics are made up. But it's something like that. You should have a week's worth of food in your house. Simple. Between your fridge and your freezer, a week's worth of food should be nothing. You should really have way more than that. Prepper Classroom on this YouTube channel, Bear Independent Prepper Classroom, we go into all that stuff. But food will become an issue because what's the average grocery store has 3 days worth of food on hand? Well, if there's no electrons flowing, and we'll get into transpo in a minute, and there's no refrigeration, what food exists in the inventory, on the wholesale inventory and in retail stores, that food's not going to be food for very long. After Hurricane Katrina, I was headed down I-95 in Florida to go do storm cleanup, and there was where was it? Was it in Tallahassee? Anyway, there was a truck stop that had 1,000 semi-trucks filled with food that the federal government had acquired for disaster relief, for relief efforts through FEMA. 1,000 of them. They were each being paid $1,000 to a day to sit. So 1,000 times 1,000 is $1 million. And they had each one been sitting for 30 days. So that's 30 million bucks of taxpayer dollars spent to pay those trucks to sit there. After a hurricane, now Katrina was a big hurricane, but after a hurricane, not an EMP, to be coordinated by the federal government to send these truckloads of food to points around the Gulf that were affected by the storm. And because FEMA can't logistic its way out of a wet paper bag, all the food that was in those trucks had spoiled weeks ago, and they were still being paid to sit there. So, yeah, that's a thing. Food. So you need to have food, and the availability of food is going to immediately become severely limited. Water. You need to have water in your house. The general prepper rule is a gallon of water per person per day. That's a bare minimum if you ask me. It's more like 3 to 5 gallons of water per person per day, because you need 1 for drinking on average, 1 for cleaning your dirty body and the dishes and everything, your tools, everything else that you make dirty, and 1 for food preparation, because a lot of prepper food is dehydrated. So if it's dehydrated, I have to rehydrate it. And so in reality, it ends up looking more like 3 to 5 gallons of water per person per day. And then if you have pets or if you have livestock, you're going to need more water for them as well. Storing water is hard because water's bulky, it's heavy, 8.35 pounds per gallon. And so a really good thing to do is look at, how many people do I have in my house? I got 5 people in my house, and we need 3 gallons per person per day. So that's 15 gallons per day, 30 days in a month. That's 450 gallons. So that's like 9 blue barrels filled with water. Okay. So can I fill those up and put them in the garage, put them in the barn? Yeah, I can do that. I would make sure they're sitting on top of like a concrete slab or something, because it's a lot of weight. 400-ish pounds per barrel. So you got 3,600 pounds sitting right here in these water barrels. Anyway, I digress. But then how do I replenish those? So like putting a downspout on your gutter on your house and having some type of rainwater collection, or a well, or all the other prepper things, right? Water. A week's worth of water for a family of 4 is, or a family of 5 is, what's 7 times 15, right? 105 gallons. So like 2 blue barrels of water. But because the electrons aren't flowing, most places, urban and suburban, the water's not going to flow either. And if you live rurally and you're on a well, your well, depending on if you're directly affected by the EMP, may not produce water either. And so having mechanical backups for your well to be able to drop a well bucket into your well and pull water back up, or having rainwater catchment that's pressurized by gravity, or whatever. You need a workaround for that. What happens over the first week? Well, the third is utilities. Electricity runs the modern world. Your water is pumped. Your sewage is pumped with electricity. Natural gas lines, SCADA systems, system controls and data acquisition is powered by electricity. Commo, fiber optic and cell towers, electricity. Your electricity is electricity. So all that's going to go away, which is probably going to contribute to chaos. And now a lot of people get the food, they get the water. What they don't get is like, and it's gross, people don't want to talk about it, but how are you going to poop, where you're going to poop, how are you going to wash your dirty body? Because flies, fingers, feces, this is what makes people sick, right? So what are you going to do about those things? Sanitation is huge. And with a lack of sanitation in a grid down scenario, people can get sicker faster. So you want a way to deal with that, because there's no utilities. And that's going to contribute, or be exacerbated by, rather, comma and intel, item number 4. No Facebook, no Instagram, no Reddit, no YouTube, no Drudge Report or RT or The Blaze, no Fox, MSNBC, CNN, C-SPAN. All that's down. Where are you getting your news from? What news is there to get? And so radios for commo is good. Simplex communication from radio to radio. Maybe there's a repeater that you can touch somewhere, but did that repeater survive? A lot of people make a big deal about cell phone towers have backup generation. They're supposed to, if the generators were ever installed, if there's fuel in them, if they've been maintained, if they weren't affected, because the equipment probably was affected by the EMP, the transmission equipment, the antennas, are the battery backups, the batteries and the battery backups, are they fried? Cascading effects. Did the EMP create an overcurrent situation on the localized grid that popped all of the fuses and or burn up connections in your neighborhood neck of the woods, that it doesn't matter what's happening in the rest of the world, but this 5-mile square area has no power anyway? Like, cascading follow-on effects. By the way, DOE, Department of Energy, estimates that from a cold start of the grid, nothing's running nationally, it could take 2 to 7 years to restart the grid from a cold start. And that's not doomer porn. That's what they said. Like, oofta. I hope your German's good, and you got a black felt hat and some suspenders and a horse to ride, because we're all Amish now at that point. Like, it is pretty rough. Although this whole pacifism thing, like, I don't want to start any fights, but dude, I will 100% end them if you are trying to be mean to me and my people. I've never understood that about the Amish. But anyway, whatever. So commo and intel, who are you going to talk to? What intel is there to gather? Well, I definitely want to know what's going on around me. That matters. That will affect my life way more localized than what's happening in Singapore. Still interested in what's happening in Singapore if I can get that information, but what's happening on the other side of that ridge, it has way more bearing on my day-to-day life after an event like this. Which gets into public safety, item number 5. I've seen this after, for example, Hurricane Michael in Panama City, Florida. Law enforcement there stayed home. And they stayed home because they could not guarantee the safety of their officers because they had no commo. So there were no cops. And when there were no cops, people who were in many cases already desperate, who now have no thin blue line pushing back against their unrighteous shenanigans, do whatever the hell they want to do. That's why you see all these "you loot, we shoot" signs, because they do. People try and loot and people get shot. So, Second Amendment stuff is cool. Really don't want to have to shoot anybody, but people are going to be behaving badly, and public service, or public safety rather, law enforcement, EMS, and fire can't dispatch because they can't talk. If they have fuel in their vehicles, they may not get any more fuel than what they already have. And law enforcement, fire, and EMS, their houses are down too. Seen this after myriad storms. Like, their houses got schwacked too. Their people are stressed out too. They have their own exacerbating, extenuating circumstances. So public safety probably not going to be operational within a week of an EMP. And even if they were, how are you going to contact them? So, which leads to item number 6, civil unrest. People behaving badly. A lot of people are just looking for reasons to behave badly, including some people in the prepper space, werewolf preppers and people who are just operating unrighteously. The more built up of an area you're in, the more people could potentially be behaving badly around you. So population density matters a lot. Find a place to be that is not surrounded by potential threats. Whether it's you have a bug out plan to go there, which how are you going to do that after an EMP? Can it be done? Yes, it can be done, but have you done it? Have you pressure tested that? Or better yet, leave now, avoid the rush. Things to think about, strategic relocation. Be around people to your left and to your right who are a blessing and who are an asset, not who are going to try and steal your stuff when the balloon goes up. So civil unrest, because there is no public safety, because public safety agencies and organizations cannot operate because there is no commo and intel. See, cascading effects. Medical. Hospitals do have backup generators. If the backup generation runs, those hospital backup generators are typically designed to operate the ICU and a NICU if they have one. Not the ER, not the OR, the operating room. That's really important, because if your SHTF plan is to get into and win as many gunfights as possible, that's stupid, because bullets go both ways, and sooner or later you're going to run into somebody who's better at this than you are. And if you get shot and have to put a tourniquet on somebody, congratulations, you won the surgery challenge. We don't just tourniquet people and then that's the end of it, right? They're always elevated to a higher level of care. Well, there is no higher level of care because there is no commo, there is no intel, there is no public safety, there is no transportation, there is no hospital. There's no hospital. There's nobody at the hospital. They can't see in the dark. Their systems won't operate because they're all dependent upon electrons. So, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Don't play stupid games, because from a medical standpoint, you're more or less on your own. Yourself, your household, your skills, your equipment, your capabilities, and your network. Who do you know? It's like, be really good to know a vet, to know a doc, to know a physician's assistant, to know a chiropractor, to know a midwife or a doula, to know all these people that have medical knowledge, when you can't just pick up the phone and call 911, when even if you can get to the hospital, if there's nobody there and they're not accepting patients. I've seen that after myriad tornadoes and hurricanes. They have no power. There's no way to triage. There's no ER. There's no OR. There's no operating room. It's just the ICU and the NICU. And it's a skeleton crew operating those. That's it. So I would expect that within a week after an EMP. There's no medical. So don't do stupid things. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Transpo and fuel, number 8. Can you get fuel out of the ground when the power's off at the gas station? The answer to that is yes, with a backup generator. You can. You can disconnect the gas station from the electrical grid so that you're not backfeeding the grid. God forbid somebody grabs one of those live wires and they get electrocuted. It's a whole thing. But you can backfeed with a generator of 10 kW or larger. If you've got 50 amps, 240 single phase out, although you may need way larger than that, several hundred amps 3-phase, 240, 277, 408, or I'm sorry, 208 or 480, depending on the wiring. Do you know all these things? Are you an electrician? It is feasible, because I've seen it done after hurricanes and tornadoes, to take a generator, backfeed that building that has been isolated from the grid, and use that generator to operate those pumps to get the fuel out of the ground and then up from the ground through the pumps. But because there's no commo, nobody's going to be swiping their card, tapping their chip in order to pay, which gets back to cash or small denomination silver and gold or barter and trade. I'd expect to see all of that. Cash, small denomination, silver and gold, barter and trade immediately after an EMP within the first week, because I've seen it after tornadoes and hurricanes. And there'll probably be a period of time, 1 to 5-ish days, where cash is still accepted as currency before people start to realize none of this matters, because the bank doesn't have power either, and they're not open, and all of their accounts are in ones and zeros on their computer anyway. It was all a bunch of funny money. So you want this thing that I have, you need to give me something of value in exchange for this thing that I have. And so the value of fiat currency will probably, if we're talking national level EMP, fall off pretty quick. So it is possible to get fuel out of the ground. It's possible. Dude, logistics wins wars. The guy who controls the gas station, congratulations, he's the new warlord in this territory. It's a big deal. But if we're talking wide scale EMP, are the roads even navigable? Because there's disabled vehicles all over the place. Where are you going with them? What are we doing? So we go from a global system to a very localized system almost immediately with an EMP. How far can I walk? This is now my circle right here. How much can I provide for myself and the people that I love inside of this circle that I can walk right here? Is there trees, grass, water? Is there fuel in the form of firewood? Is there vegetable and animal agriculture producing calories rather than just consuming them, etc., etc.? Because transpo is more or less a thing of the past at this point, unless you're friends with your buddy Yoder, who's going to hook up the mule to the wagon and we're going to go to town. For what? What are we getting from town? Except maybe shot. I don't know. Chainsaws, you'll hear a lot of chainsaws in the first week or so. After that, people will probably start running out of fuel. If it's winter when this happens, expect a lot of potential casualties because of heat. Fuel oil tends to come on trucks. Propane tends to come on trucks. In some places, there's subsurface natural gas infrastructure, dependent upon the grid for metering. Firewood, unless you're cutting your own, tends to come on trucks. And let's be frank, we tend to move it with trucks and operate chainsaws that run on gasoline. And so there's a timeline for viability of all these things, and the further you go, the less viable it is because of fuel. So transportation logistics are going to be like that. It's going to be a thing. To the extent that governance still exists, I would expect to see in the more populated areas curfews and martial law. I've never seen, well, maybe. Yeah, martial law after a hurricane or a tornado, no, but curfews, absolutely. Absolutely. Curfews. After this time, usually 9 p.m., you will not be on the streets. If you're on the streets, you will consider to be considered to be a bad actor, and law enforcement will act against you. But if there's no law enforcement, no governance, there might not be curfews and martial law, because that gets back to logistics and transportation and intel and commo. How do we facilitate all of that when the electrons aren't flowing? Does the military have stuff hardened against EMP? Absolutely. Does your local governance have anything hardened against EMP? Probably not. Now, some cities and state level agencies are working on that quietly. Shh, don't tell anybody. But I don't think the local mayor in the little podunk town over here has an entire EMP plan put together and how he's going to rally his troops to continue to govern after the balloon goes up. So, again, that's a more of a factor of population density, especially if we go back to civil unrest. The more people in the area, the more potential for people to be acting badly. So I would expect to see in the more populated areas an attempt at, if not actual, curfews and martial law. And then the last thing, number 10, follow-on attacks. Pastor Joe Fox of Viking Preparedness has talked about this on several of his videos. If he was a bad guy and he popped an EMP, he'd pop one, say on the first of the month. Then sit back and wait 2 or 3 weeks. When people start pulling all their stuff, their reserve that was in their Faraday cages, that they need to rebuild after an EMP, 3 weeks later, pop another one. Take the reserve equipment out as well. Super duper nefarious, but makes absolute sense. And so follow-on attacks, nation-state level follow-on attacks, or maybe the EMP is the signal that makes all the Iranian sleeper cells and the Chinese military-aged males who are coming across our border activate. Maybe. That's entirely possible, which again goes back to population density, commo, intel, having people to your left and to your right who are net benefit to your way of life, not a drain on you, operating together in unity for righteousness, right? Yeah, the population density thing matters a lot. And so within the first week of an EMP, that's what I would expect to see. That's what I would be concerned about based upon my background in power construction and my background in disaster relief. WS, great question. I appreciate y'all. We do stuff like this on Patreon all the time, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. There's a link in the description. And tell me what you guys think in the comments. You know how it goes. And share the show with people that you love. Get it out there. And I want to end with this. Preparedness is a methodology that we use to perpetuate normalcy for the people that we love. We mitigate risk with preparedness. It's like a life insurance policy, just with physical goods, relationships with people, and skills and assets and talents that we have and that we develop. But it's an insurance policy. So don't lose your crap. Don't spin out of control about an EMP. Is it possible? Yes. Is it plausible? Dude, I think it's way more plausible that you have to live your life tomorrow than that North Korea or China or Russia or Iran or insert nation state bad actor here puts warheads on our foreheads. More likely you have to be a husband, a father, a mother, a grandpa, a grandma, an employee, a pastor, a brother, a sister tomorrow than, oh no, China did the thing and we're back in the Stone Age, Fred Flintstone style. So the ability to see around corners and project what's going to happen over there in four-dimensional space-time is important. And we do want to mitigate that risk to the best of our ability, but don't let it rob you of your joy. Okay? Don't let it rob you of your joy. I appreciated the question. I thought it was a great thought exercise for me. I hope y'all are having a blessed day. I'll see you in the comments. Shalom.